I am tearing up.
I just about screamed right now, and I'm not even there.
Now that's inspirational, Natalie. I feel inspired today.
I could be here for another hour.
And I was talking to my class. There were only 2 of us, and the other guy was in the hospital. So here I am.
And I always go, he winds up homeless on the street, and it's my fault.
Yeah, now you sound like my wife.
And you can get off.
I don't know. Call it Google. Call it Google.
Yeah. Control. Alexa, how does he get across?
Paul, I cut you off earlier. What were you going to say?
What?
Dang it! Don't do that to me, Paul. Don't do that to me, man.
I don't know what got into my head, but I thought this thought, if I'm working year round, I might as well get paid year round.
Sweet Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education and Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and subscribe today. Now, it's time to get started with Sweet Talk.
Welcome, everybody. It's Paul Dickey. It's another episode of Sweet Talk. Today, we're going to have a couple little stumbles here and there because I don't have my pal Jason here with us today. And you know how much he usually takes over the show, and I just kind of chime in and make fun of him. But today, we have a very interesting guest. Again, I usually go into these shows cold. And welcome, Nancy Goodman, author of the book Fumbling Towards Serenity. Welcome to the show, Nancy. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Here. Yeah.
So I did look through your intro just a little bit. I just kind of skimmed it because I go into these things cold. Could you tell us a little bit about your book?
Okay. So the book Fumbling Towards Serenity, and it's a weekly guide, is a compilation of columns that I used to write for the Idaho State Journal and Blackfoot Morning News. I was really lucky to have the opportunity. I'm a licensed counselor. I've done a lot of different counseling things. I also have my own sort of worldview and perspective and philosophy and theory that I pull from. And it was really just kind of an opportunity. I wrote weekly about pretty much anything I wanted to in any of that kind of direction. So I did that column for about 4 or 5 years. And then after that was working on pulling them all together, compiling them by week. So it kind of follows a calendar year. I basically picked 52 columns that I liked the most and kind of scattered and sorted them so that it kind of flows through a calendar year roughly. It's one way to do that. So that's, it covers a lot of different things. Each chapter is about, it's a 600-word column is what I was writing. And so finally got it put together, and it's sort of the best of. It's my chance to have all those out in the world, and just really happy to be on the other side of that project. So that's that's the source of the material.
Great. So what kind of columns are we talking about? Give me a couple examples of the things you would write about.
So some of the main things, I write a lot about sort of relationships and personal growth. So self-confidence, self-esteem, assertiveness. I'm a really big fan of career development. So how do we evolve through our lives in terms of what we do, what gives us meaning and purpose. So I write a lot about career types of things from more of a spiritual perspective, a little bit more of that career is calling, like what are the deeper things you might not necessarily get that won't get picked up on a career assessment of any kind. So a lot of that, and then just kind of holiday related, sort of whatever I felt like.
Okay, so basically, whatever spurred what spurred you on at that time.
Yeah, and I tried to hit a lot of the bases in terms of just general mental health and wellness. I wanted to, a lot of the books and people that have inspired me and helped me, I've got pretty much, there's an index in the back that has a reference list of sort of all the books I've ever read, all the articles I've ever read that have inspired me.
Okay, so
reflecting that out.
Excellent. So these articles that you write, are they more towards basically, are they like to try to help someone with their own self-care?
Yeah, for sure. Or the self-care of somebody else, it could be, there's a lot of different things in there. And so it could be that, certain parts of it are relevant, other parts might not be, but it's still kind of just a read through of just, basically the ABCs of self-care, personal development, psychology, kind of like what are those foundational psychology and counseling types of theory that you can plug in and sort of help to apply how do you think about your experience of life from a lot of different perspectives.
So I imagine that you pull from your own experiences when you're writing these articles.
You bet, a ton. Yeah. I was single for a long time. And so a lot of my content is sort of related to that. Actually, I met my husband at the beginning of my writing sort of career. And so that there's something to be said for doing your thing and waiting for that person to come along as a secondary project. So that I have to say that's kind of what worked for me in that case, which is sort of strange. But so a lot of personal development. So how do you self-esteem, self-confidence being the main, a big underlying theme of how do you keep your head screwed on straight, feeling good about yourself in a world that might not necessarily want you to feel good about yourself.
Right. So with these like kind of reflections of your own ideas and the ways you felt at times?
Sure. So my ideas sort of plus the theory that I learned, right? So as a professional, what kind of counseling theory did I learn as a student and apply with clients? And also how did I plug that into my own self? So there's definitely reflections of that. My career path is sort of reflected in there. My journey of, towards my own self-confidence, my own sense of self-identity, pushing my own boundaries in the world of, spirituality and sort of the more mysterious elements of life. So, you kind of like a little bit of personal, but a lot of it is sort of anchored in the empirical stuff. So like, what do the experts have to say about it?
Okay.
And
so you're drawing from different resources to come up with the consensus?
Yes. I need to have an empirically valid life, right? So can I read that somewhere that somebody else has thought that? And then I put my own little spin on it. We all do that. So.
Well, you read these kind of articles in a paper, and I think, for the most part, a lot of times if you're in a good place or you're having a good day, you kind of look at it and go, oh, that's nice. I find that these type of articles are you actually pay more attention to them, or you're more aware of them when you're not in the best place in your life. For sure. And that that's what the feedback I got kind of writing the column is, reading it when you're kind of in a good place or not really thinking about it. It's a nice read, right? Right. Easy kind of thing to read. But my hope is that it's going to clunk in deeper if it's something that you're experiencing right at that time. Well, I think we all go through life daily, and we all either we either on that nice level plane, or we are in a kind of lower or more maybe kind of a I think the word is we're not happy. Right. We're not feeling satisfied where we are, and I think sometimes talking to your friends are great, but your friends are always going to be cheerleaders for you. It's hard for them to be objective. And reading an article from someone else who has a professional background, sometimes you get those kernels that you go, I didn't even think about that. Right. I go, and that and you know what? This article helped me move on today, or it helped me get into a better place. Right. Now, we're writing for the paper, you must have gotten some direct responses or people reaching out to you. I did. And I'll tell you what, that's one of the most favorite things a counselor could ever hear is the, wow, I didn't think of it that way. Right. Like, wow, that's just like that's a big karma shot from the universe right there, is to actually have somebody say that. Right. Right. And so, there was definitely that experience of hearing from people. The cool thing is they would clip out the column sometimes and send it to somebody. So to think that there's some of my old articles out there, like on somebody's refrigerator, is really, really a cool idea for me. That is cool. That's cool. And what's kind of interesting is, I spent the last several years kind of drafting and editing, right? And so life goes on during that time. And there have been times I've looked back at like a certain chapter or a certain thing, be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's how I should be thinking about this, particular situation. So Yeah, I mean, do you ever sometimes go back and look at your stuff and going, who wrote this?
Right. Or thank God somebody wrote this, so this was here. Because we cycle through, and we move on, even though, writing is a piece of thing that's kind of locked in time, but life goes on. And my hope with the book is that it is timeless, so to speak, that it would be something that people could read anywhere at any time, and it still holds its relevance, right?
I think so. I don't think the human condition has changed so much in so many years that when you read articles about certain life advice, that it's going to be so drastically changed. I think when I was young during the 80s and 90s, I think it's just an article like that would be relative just then as it is now. I don't think people change so much in their inner self. I mean,
not
times,
really. I mean, that's
times
kind of
change.
say. Yeah.
Times change, technology changed, but I think the human condition doesn't change that much.
You're right. And that's true. And right now it's really kind of interesting because this is a very interesting time, right? So
that's a good description. That is a very interesting description.
Yes.
Yes.
And certain challenges and certain things have come to the collective surface of things that aren't necessarily all that pleasant, but we are all still very, very kind of basic and simple at the core. And trying to adapt and change and absorb a lot of new stuff with really kind of a fairly simple operating system. It's simple and complex at the same time.
Right.
But
also, I think over the last couple of years, some people might have gotten more isolated than they had previously.
Yes.
I know that even though I have people with me, I don't go out as often. I stay in more often, and it kind of you feel kind of sometimes more nested than you want to be.
It's very, I've definitely felt that myself. I feel like it broke down into kind of introverts and extroverts at this beginning of this whole COVID thing. People like me who are really kind of comfortable being by themselves. Our energy is more self-reflective versus the extroverted types who get their energy from other people and sort of their external environment. Introverts are having a party of one,
Yeah, and I'm an introverted person, so initially I thought, hey, great, I have excuses not to see people.
Exactly.
But but then after time went by, I kind of want to see some people.
Yeah. And kind of get back into that groove of having that balance. It's still, and I'm working my way towards that too. Like, okay, I'm going to go to these functions. I am going to push back against my own desire to kind of just be at home and, be in my own little place to reestablish that balance. Because that's what's important, is to kind of just, no matter, whoever you are, we want to have some sort of equilibrium about how we do that so that we feel settled and feel like we're not falling behind on anything or like not doing stuff that we should be doing.
Right.
So,
right. No, I think, because we're also in, this may go back to your articles. You may have a couple of articles that say, hey, you should go out and, to be interacting with friends and family might be a good, and you go, oh, I can't do that right now.
But it's maybe time to cautiously tiptoe out there. And there's lots of levels of safety we can still kind of employ. We'll see.
Yeah.
Getting back out there in the world a little bit. There's definitely places I'm not comfortable going into quite yet and may not ever again, who knows, but
I think that your book, especially in these times, might be something that someone definitely needs just to do a little self-evaluation on themselves, especially if they're, maybe they don't have a large group that they can depend on, because sometimes you don't know, because you're in yourself, you don't know how well you're doing. And maybe having something just to kind of gauge against or read some advice, you go, oh, maybe I'm not doing that well, or maybe I'm just fine.
Right. Yeah. And if, it's kind of feeling comfortable with what you're doing. And if there's something that you want to adjust or recalibrate, we always have an opportunity to do that no matter what or when, we are. And there is a little bit of a pre-introduction in the book about COVID. I didn't want to like rewrite the whole stinking thing.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that a bit and go, well, this book is very recent.
Yeah, no,
this book is very recent. And yeah, it was very, very brief. But I think it does, if you're writing a book within these times, you should mention these times.
Sure.
I mean, I hope, knock on wood, that, once we pass these times, we don't see this for a while.
Right. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
And it's something to learn, and it's a collective experience that we're all having that's relevant. I think it's like a time capsule kind of experience where, where were we? How old were we? Did we have kids? Were we single when this whole thing occurred? Because it's as many humans as there are on the planet, there's an individual story about what happened during this time.
Oh yeah.
Right?
And
we all have our own. And there's a lot of suggestions in the book about kind of just the back to basics kind of thing. And that's where I really was like, yeah, I think this is kind of a timeless thing that even during this time, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's just kind of like the building blocks in any circumstance psychologically of how to manage things and how to feel about yourself and what and who to look for to get more information on feeling more at ease in general.
Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna check it out, the book a little more. I only kind of looked at the thing, but I from the area, so I probably read your article at least once or twice in the paper.
Could be. And I've gotten that. It was a couple years ago.
No, I've been here.
Yeah. So it's at the library. So for those of you listening locally, I have there's a book club set at the Marshall Public Library.
Okay.
So you can certainly check it out. And then it is on Amazon. And then locally, it's at the Brew House and Walrus and Carpenter Books. So those are kind of that are signed.
Oh, those signed. Okay.
Yeah, the signed, right? And then you can get it on Amazon or Kindle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a Kindle version and an Amazon version, and they're very reasonably priced.
Not terrible. That's what I'm happy with that. So, that's, that whole journey itself, the journey of self-publishing and how to wade through all of that. That was like this meta lesson as I was going through, is how to get through all of that. That was definitely.
That would be a great podcast too, would be to have you back to talk about self-publishing.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure we have lots of people that are interested in that.
A ton. And it really is a lot easier to do. The parallel thing with that is also, that's the ego battle of getting it done. And you really, when you're doing something out of your comfort zone like that, where it's like, this is my brain. Hello, welcome to my brain.
Okay.
You keep yourself together to be able to do that.
So here's a good question. So obviously you had a collection of the articles you had written for the newspaper, but what was the thing that said, I'm going to turn this into a book?
That's a hard question to answer. It was in the back of my mind as a possibility of some point. And I had a couple other ideas based on some of the columns in the book. I have like sort of drafted out as being like standalone things potentially. So the chapter, The Savvy Traveler's Guide to Crazy Town is one of the chapters in the book. Oh, and in my mind, and I've got to draft it out like that as a standalone book of some kind someday.
Okay.
But what was the easiest to put together at the time was the set of columns. So that's kind of, I decided ultimately to start with that because that was one that it was mostly put together. I was able to piece it together. The journey of writing and then trying to find a publisher and all of that. And that's a pretty arduous journey. And so it ultimately flipped around in the order of things that this was the one that I was able to kind of produce and get out there to kind of scratch that itch of being out there in terms of my writing. And then we'll see what happens after that, kind of.
So when you're writing for a local paper each week, I mean, that's one thing that you're doing a block and but when you create a book, how does that affect your ego? I mean, is it something like you have this, built up ego going, yes, I'm going to do this book, or do you have like these trepidations where you go, does anyone want to read my book?
Up and down and all around. Yes to all those things. And I think everybody's got their own individual ego areas of sensitivity, right?
Right.
And I do think that part of the reason why it took me a while to do it was because of that. Like I would get in my own way, at stops along the journey, because self-publishing is a pretty isolating. You're not doing it with the support of a publisher. You're not doing it with the support of a academic department or whatever it is. So it's kind of a lonely kind of experience, and where it really is kind of like you and your main cheerleaders. So like, I mean, my friends and family are always like, yeah. But, to really kind of like trust it. And I think that was another reason why I liked doing the column book, because I had that validation already, right? So it's published,
Right.
It was paper, I got the feedback. So I knew a baseline of, some people thought this was readable at some point. So, I was like, okay, that definitely helped me a bit, but it's an ego, it's an ego journey for sure.
Right.
And
I mean,
it's important to be aware of that.
I mean, because you're also, I mean, yes, you were putting yourself out there on a weekly basis
Mhm.
locally, but now you're putting yourself out there on a more wide national or hopefully international basis for people to read your thoughts and your opinions.
Right. And it's a different format, really. Once a week is like 600 words a week with a whole bunch of other stuff in between, right?
Right.
Versus it's all there packed in. And how does that feel? How does that sound when it's kind of all smushed together like that?
Right.
And again, just the second guessing and the, will people actually like it? All of that kind of stuff. And then the double ego of like, why is this not done yet? What's the matter? Like, I thought this was going to take 6 months.
And that's the whole thing when you're self-publishing. Do you create your own publishing date, or was it something that in flux? And sometimes you went, yeah, I haven't worked on this for a while, and maybe I should. And, because you don't have a publisher that pushes you.
Right. You don't have anything really external pushing you. It's all got to be internal. And no, I can't say I was the most efficient at it at all. It would be definitely good to have time. I did have a writing partner for a while. So when I was fleshing out some stuff, Jackie Mon and I would sit together, and she had her writing stuff that she was working on, and I was writing some stuff. And so we would get together. And so that was really helpful, is to have somebody else kind of to be accountable to for a while. That was super helpful.
Right.
To have that.
Hey, Nancy, we hit the 20-minute mark.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I got one last question, because I always like to wrap up with one last question.
Okay.
If you were trying to, if you're trying to sell your book and you wanted to, in a very short, concise way, say why someone should buy your book, what would you tell them?
There's something in there for everybody, I guess I'd have to say. Open it up and see what's in there.
Okay.
It covers all things. There's something in there that I think everybody would find something that could be interesting. Even if you just read the reference list and see all the books, right? Like,
right.
Oh, I'm going to pick up that book. I'm going to pick up, any of these other ones. So I think it's a useful guide and a manual or reference.
Yeah.
For kind of basic mental health. And it never ends. We're always have something on our plate. So
always have something on a plate.
Yeah.
So that's Fumbling Towards Serenity, a weekly guide by Nancy A. Goodman.
Yes.
Nancy A. Goodman. And for all our Sweet Talk listeners, if you need to contact us, please reach out at our website at cetrain.isu.edu or email us at cetrain@isu.edu. And you can also reach us by phone at 208-282-3372. And if you like this video, please like and or subscribe. Thank you. Hey, Nancy, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. It's been really nice talking to you, and I would love to get you back on to talk about self-publishing.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I know how to do it now. So yeah.
Well, plus, I'm a kind of a technical InDesign person, and so I like to talk about how you do that. So the whole emotional, technical, that sounds like more than a 20-minute podcast.
Really fast.
Yeah.